Hey guys, welcome back to Practical Therapy again. Thanks for joining and tuning in. Today we are going to be talking about empathy. First, I'm going to explain a little bit about what it is and then about how you can apply it in yourself as an individual, help teach it to your children, and even apply it in your marriage. So real quick, empathy sounds a lot like sympathy. So it's easy to get the two confused, but they're nothing alike. So let's talk really quickly about what empathy is not and what sympathy is. So sympathy is really defined as feeling sorrowful or pitiful for another person's misfortune. So kind of like feeling bad for someone where you would say, oh, I'm so sorry, that's so rough. Or, that must be miserable. I'm so sorry. Let me know if you need anything. That must be, just so stressful. I'm not going to say sympathy is a bad thing. What I will say is sympathy is like the surface. It's like just getting to the surface and addressing the issue on a very minimal surfacey level. So it's not like the worst because we're busy people and we don't always have time to like pour out and do empathy skills with everybody. So sympathy is better than nothing. It is a form that we use in our culture to connect with people. So I'm not going to say sympathy is a horrible thing, but I will say it's pretty minimal compared to what empathy is. So let's talk real quick about what empathy is. Empathy is stepping into the other person's shoes. It's understanding the story, their experience, their journey, whatever it is that they're going through. It's understanding remember I talked about how all behavior is purposeful? So empathy is stopping and thinking about like, okay, why did they do what they did? What's their reasons? It's understanding their why. It's really understanding the person. So empathy is when you're trying to stop and think, okay, if I were them with this story and with these problems or this experience, how would that make me feel? And then you see the way that they're feeling and you try and make sense to why that's their experience and why is that their response. It's really all about trying to understand the other person. Just stepping into their shoes and connecting with them. A good way to show empathy is by like mirroring what the person is experiencing, but authentically mirroring it. Like, that would make me so sad too, or I wouldn't even know what to do if I was in your situation as well. And you're by mirroring back authentically what the person's feeling, it's sending the message that they're validated and it's sending the message that they're understood. So there's so many different examples for how you can do this with your kids or with your spouse or with friends, right? Like if you're trying to develop this skill in yourself and how you want to do it, I think the best way is to not minimize, right? So you're not going to blow off and be like, well, it'll all be better eventually, or tomorrow's another day. I'm not saying those positive things are not good. I'm just saying those positive things of encouraging, that's not empathy. So just recognizing what empathy is, I think that there's room and place for it in every relationship. There's kind of the idea also is if you really understand somebody's why, it doesn't mean you're justifying what they did. It means that you're really seeing them for who they are and knowing them for who they are. And there's kind of this concept, this philosophy that goes with empathy, that if you really stop, this happens with my clients all the time. I have some clients that come in where, at face value, when you hear about the case instantly and you hear about what that mom did or what that dad did, it'd be so easy to judge them. But when you stop and you sit with them and you really hear their why and you really hear their story and their history and their experiences, you understand them and you see them. And it's really hard when you really know someone and see them for who they are. You really stand in their shoes. It's hard not to love them because you see them for everything that they are. Their pain, their hurt, their story, their reality. And it's almost like if you stand in the shoes of your enemy, it's hard to not love your enemy. So no matter how big of a fight you are in with somebody, if you stop and you stand in their shoes and you understand all of their reasoning, again, it's not justifying what they've done or what they've said. You're not justifying the negative, but you're understanding where the negative sprouted from. It's going to help you to really connect with that person. It's going to help you to almost, in a sense, love them. So through empathy, the saying goes, is it's easy while while truly investing in the skill of empathy, that you can even love your enemy, because you understand their story, you understand them, and see them for truly who they are. So really a good like kind of motto is, okay, why are they doing what they're doing? Why is this happening? And stepping into their shoes and trying to make sense of what's happened, and hearing them, definitely hearing what they're saying. A great way to do this in marriage is when you have a conflict and you're not seeing eye to eye. Obviously, the best way for your spouse to communicate would be by softly, like you can check back in on the video my husband and I did last week of talking appropriately while fighting. But obviously your spouse should try and be sharing in an appropriate, calm, healthy manner, but that does not always happen. Let's just be real. So I think a really good way to show empathy while even being yelled at when your spouse is mad at you and they're frustrated is to stop and not overly focus on the negative. Don't focus on what they're complaining about. Don't focus on their negative attitude. Don't focus on their frustrating body language that they're giving you. Stop and make your goal to just uncover the heart underneath the message. The heart underneath the message. What are they feeling? What are they feeling disrespected? Are they feeling unloved? Are they not feeling appreciated? Are they not feeling validated? Are they feeling ignored? So get to the heart underneath the message. And that's the best way to be able to use this in your marriage, is regardless of what the message is, regardless of how it's being pushed on you or conveyed to you, you use the skill to stop and really understand the heart underneath what they are saying. No matter how ugly they're saying it, you're hearing the heart. One of the things I never stop in my office is I never stop a client from yelling. I get yelled at a lot. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I get yelled at by kids and by parents all the time. I never stop them. What I do in that moment is I still hear them, and I still uncover the heart underneath it. And literally 10 out of 10 times usually they're really floored that I can handle being yelled at, and I can actually say, so what you're saying is, when you were put in that position, it really scared you and it made you uncomfortable and you felt like I pushed you too hard. And so I think it's really important to learn how to do this even when a message is not being conveyed to you. And it builds trust. It builds trust with your kids. It builds trust in your marriage. It builds trust in all of your relationships. This is a great way to build trust and deepen the intimacy in relationships. So that's a really great way to use it in marriage. And then with friends, I think a lot of times with our friends, we kind of try and like minimize things, like, oh man, I'm so sorry, tomorrow's another day, or oh well, at least it's almost 5 o'clock, you're almost off work, or whatever. It's really easy to minimize and blow things off, but just try and exercise even empathy in your friendships and with your family members, your mother-in-law or your father-in-law, or your in-laws or whatever. I think it's important to exercise empathy with all of our personal relationships. And then lastly, just talking about how to exercise this with your kids. Okay, so empathy is something that needs to be learned. It's not something we do naturally. If somebody is born empathetic, they probably should be a therapist. No, it's a really tough skill to learn. You have to be very conscious of it, and then it's just over time you just eventually get better at it. But so with your kids, you want to be teaching them this skill. So even start using the word. How would that, like, how do you think that made your sister feel? Can you show some empathy towards her by thinking about by trying to understand why she did what she did? So really try and use the word empathy when you're teaching your kids, so they will grow up knowing the word empathy and understanding what it is, and not sympathy. Because sympathy was actually something we were taught as kids, and that was seen as a good thing. And again, it's not a negative thing, but it's definitely not as positive and what's the word? It's not as connected. It doesn't connect you as much as empathy connects you. So with your kids, you're going to help them just learn the language of what empathy is and just the vocabulary of that. And then you're going to do it with them, right? That's how you teach your kid to be empathetic, is you be empathetic with them, and you be that role model first and foremost. And then when they start seeing that in you, then you're going to start teaching them how to do that themselves in their relationships with their siblings and their peers or their parents or grandparents. You're going to teach them how to do that skill with other people. And in order to do that, you got to help them label emotions. Do you think your sister was frustrated? Do you think she was sad? Do you think she was scared? So help them label those emotions, because they need the vocabulary to be able to say, I was feeling, or I think she was feeling, or if it was me, I would feel that way. So you really got to give them that vocabulary language, not just mad, happy, sad, but there's lonely, scared, frustrated, rejected. There's a lot of emotional words that our culture doesn't use and we don't use really much. So you can Google emotional vocabulary and you will get a list of a billion of them on Google. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but that's going to be definitely a place you want to start with your kids. And then lastly, when you're doing this with your kids, you're wanting to still limit set through this and saying, yes, your sister was frustrated and feeling really, rejected at the time when she hit you. That was not okay. So you want to make sure you still limit test while you're doing this with your kids, because if you only say, oh, this is how she was feeling, let's apologize, you don't want to send the message that we're justifying the action. We're justifying what was done. So when you're doing this with your kids, let them know that empathy does not mean justification for negative behaviors. That's definitely a message that you want to send clearly to your kids. Still do the limit testing. If you're using empathy with them, okay, you hit your sister, I understand you were feeling this way, this is the consequence, but you're going to still make sure you explore empathy with them and you connect with them and you understand where they were at emotionally and what their experience was and what they were feeling. You still want to definitely be sure to do that. But there might need to be a consequence. So set that limit and let them know empathy does not equal justification. So that's pretty much all I got for today. Empathy is honestly a skill that I feel like every single person needs to develop, because it's going to help you be a healthier individual, and it's also going to deepen all of your relationships and build trust. So empathy is a skill that I encourage everyone to develop, so that's why it's one of the first things that I'm talking about. Yeah, that's everything for today, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I saw a couple live views and likes, so thanks so much, guys. But for those of you that are not watching this live and watching it over the weekend, thanks for tuning in, and I appreciate any comments or any input. Have a good one, guys. Bye.